right, once again, welcome to MELS 601 Clinical Coach Session for February the 13th, 2019. Couple of things I wanted to go over tonight. I'm going to go ahead and back out of this scale book right now. I want to get into the internship shell and just kind of review a little bit. And I do want to let you know that Dr. Lamb called me, and I understand from what I told Dr. Lamb that he's working his core shell a little bit different in the way of the process of submitting work to him. I don't think, based on the brief conversation that we had, I don't think that he is using a review tab and an evaluation Dropbox. It's my understanding on when we spoke that he's asking you to drop straight into the Dropbox, and that's fine. Dr. Church is certainly knowledgeable and very experienced, and he can run that core shell however is best for you guys and best for him. So I understand it is confusing, and I appreciate your patience with us and kind of learning when I put it in the review tab. I put it in the review tab for Dr. Church. No, wait a minute. I put it in the Dropbox for Dr. Church. I go to Dr. Bullis. Dr. Bullis put it in the review tab for him. Then I put it in the Dropbox. And so it's kind of a little bit hectic, and I apologize for that. And I do, like I said, I do appreciate your patience. He did call me. He did understand where that was coming from. And listen, don't worry about it. The way that I run the internship shell is I have to document, if you will, the revision process. So yes, and I am your clinical coach. So I'm coming from a coaching standpoint in the fact that I'm supporting you. I'm reading your work. I'm giving you feedback. You are responding to that feedback. You do revisions. You bring it back to me for further feedback, and then once we get that process done, then we can put it into the official Dropbox, if you will, for the official grade. That helps me document the process, document the steps that we took to get you to where you're at. So that works best for me. So just think of it. Just think of this program, and we're still learning. I'm still learning you. You're still learning me. You're still learning Dr. Church. You're still learning the program and 601 and the APSL, and certainly this is all part of that transition that we all go through. But think of the MELS 601 or this whole program is basically you have three phases. Phase one, and if you look at the screen, phase one, I don't know if you're in his 601O class or a 60103 class. It doesn't really matter, but phase one is where you do work for Dr. Church in the core shell, and that's this part right here. The work that you do for him in the core shell, as I mentioned before, is what is going to get you the diploma from Gardner-Webb. You do those assignments, you have those discussions, you begin that the evidences that you're working on, you do the peer review. All of that satisfies Gardner-Webb to receive your diploma. That's phase one. Phase two is what you do with me in the internship shell. And in the internship shell, I am preparing you to get your licensure by the state of North Carolina. What you're doing up here in the core shell, that's the work that you put in. The end game is you get your diploma from Gardner-Webb. In phase two, we begin the process of the end game being your licensure from DPS. I know some of you are in South Carolina, and there's a reciprocating agreement there, and you'll approach the same thing. But the end game is to get your licensure to be a school administrator, and that's what you're doing for me in the internship shell. So phase one is the core shell where you do the assignments, and Dr. Church says, okay, I feel like your evidence at this point is ready to go to Dr. Bullis. And he gets the foundation laid and gets you on solid ground, and then he sends you to me and I fine tune it. I kind of do the finesse stuff and the little bitty details to kind of fine tune it to make sure that when you do go up before licensure, that you're either ranked at 3, which is proficient, or 4, which is accomplished. So phase 1 is here for the diploma. Phase 2 begins your licensure, and that's getting your evidence ready in the internship shell, getting it ready to go to phase 3. Phase 3 is where you officially submit these evidence into task stream. And you've heard us mention task stream. I'm not going to go over task stream tonight. I'm going to do that at the next class session when we talk about task 5. We'll talk about task 5 and how to submit to task stream, because those are really connected together. But I'm getting you ready in the internship in phase 2 for phase 3, which is task stream. Task stream is your official platform to share your artifact, to share your evidence, to share your leadership competencies in artifact and in narrative form, and that is what gets you your licensure. So I'm kind of in phase 2 in the internship shell, I'm kind of the middleman, getting you to phase 3 to task stream, where you will be evaluated, where you will be approved for your licensure for state of North Carolina. So once again, in the internship shell, I need to show the process that we use to give you feedback and revision. And for me, it's a whole lot easier and simpler, and I can keep everybody organized and on track if you submit to review first, and then go from review to the evaluation drop box. So you get your task ready, you send it to me in Absol Task for review. We polish it up, we get it ready, we do revisions. We may do 1 revision, 2 revision, 3 revision. I may read it one time and say, hey, and some of you this has happened to. I may read it one time and say, hey, this is perfect. Send it straight on to the drop box for grading. I don't have any suggestions for improvement. And so then it goes to the Dropbox for grading. Once it goes to the Dropbox for grading, it's pretty much a done artifact or a done piece of work at that time. And you save it, because once you get through that whole process and go through all the tasks at the very end, each one, you get 100 on each one. Then we're going to we'll talk about this a little bit more next time we meet, when we talk about task 5 and task stream. You will put it into one continuous document, and we will get it ready for task stream at that point in time. So once again, I appreciate your patience. Please know that if you put it in Dropbox without going to the review process, and that's happened, and it happens every semester, just kind of had more than usual this semester, which kind of caught me off guard. If that happens, I have to give it a grade at that point. I'm going to grade it to 0, just because when I see that on there, I know that I've got to go back and make sure that you send it to me in the review tab first for revision. Once we finish up here in review, and this has already happened to some of you, you send it back. Once I say, okay, submit it again to the Dropbox, then that 0 turns into 100. I noticed a few questions or a few alerts came up in the chat box. Let me check that out. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Don't worry about it. If it happened to you, and thanks again for wishing my daughter a happy birthday. But if you happen, it's okay. It happens every semester. It's just this semester there were several where there might be 1 or 2. I had quite a few that were doing that, and that's what caught me off guard. But I understand now. Dr. Church giving me a phone call and telling me where the disconnect might be. So I just wanted to go over that again. So thank you again for your patience. We'll get through this. You're not penalized in any way whatsoever if it happens. We just need to go back and make sure that we get it corrected. Also, when you submit something to me in the review session, if you submit your document to me in the review session and I review it, I give you the feedback, I post my comments in the margin, I send it back to you. Once you finished your revisions, just send it back to me in that same thread. don't create another thread, because that kind of gets me off track. I've got just about 60 of you to read and give feedback to, and I forget who I've read and who I haven't read. So if Joey uh, sends me the document, I give him revisions, and he sends it to me in a different thread, and it may be 25 down on the list from when I first spoke to him, then I'm going to think I haven't read that before. So I'm going to go through and give comments again. I may recognize it, and I have happened one time this week, and I recognize that I've read that before, but I may not. And so then you're going to get feedback again on that document, and it just helps me keep track if we stay within the same. All right, I'll check the. No, don't worry about changing the color. I'm not sure what you mean by that. It must be something that Dr. Church does, but don't worry about changing the color or anything. Just send it to me in the same document. Right now, like I said, I've been doing this for about 12 years, so I'm kind of set in my ways. So if you'll just do it that way, I would appreciate it. But thanks for the offer. Thanks for the offer. All right, so let's talk about task 3. Let me pull up the handbook here, and you guys are rolling right along. I really like what I'm seeing. I see some really good conversations. I see some thought out PLC creation. I see people who've read research, who've paid attention to that research. Maybe if it's, you might already have prior knowledge and know how to set up a PLC. But everything that I'm seeing in the professional learning community that you're setting up, I'm seeing it as a reflection from what's in the research. Perfect. Everybody's doing a good job of bringing the right people to the table, it appears. Everybody's defining roles. Everybody is looking at people's strengths, where they work best at, and then placing them within the PLC based on those strengths. And that's the mark of a leader. The mark of a leader is recognizing the potential in others and helping them work through that. Not showing them how to do it, but creating and facilitating an environment where they can feel empowered and they can do it themselves. And that's one of the leadership competencies that you're showing proof of is delegation. So within that PLC team, who's doing what and how are you facilitating and delegating that? And that kind of really comes into play here in task 3. Task 1, you got permission from your principal. And remember, you'll need to make sure that you document that you got permission from your principal or site supervisor, whoever that may be, to create a professional learning community. Pick your members, pick your team, do the research, put that in your narrative. And then in task 2, you sat down and you looked at the data. Some of you already had a really good idea of where you were wanting to head. That's fine. You pulled the data in, you pulled the team together, you had a conversation, and you identified those gaps that you want to address in task 2. Now in task 3, based on the gaps that your team has identified through their needs assessment, now you're going to look and find out what's the best practice out there. What does research say should be used or should be done to address this particular gap? It may be a program your school is already engaged in. That's fine. You may are already well into that process of addressing that learning gap with whatever program, whatever curriculum, whatever framework that you're using. That's fine too. But show the research, justify to your reader, this is why this is the best approach. That's what you're doing in task 3. You are leading that team in a collaborative effort to research and identify the best practice out there that will address that learning gap. So this is where delegation comes in. Don't do all the research yourself. Have your team go out and do that research, bring it back, and you guys have a conversation about that. If it's a program that's in your school and that's already being used, like I said, you still need to show that research to the reader to justify, yes, we are doing this, we are engaged in this implementation, but it is based on sound principles, and it is an evidence-based approach to this learning gap. And that's what task 3 is. So I'm going to pause and see what questions might be hanging out there. Okay, question. I have a question about adding another member later. Yes, that's fine. If somebody comes on board that would really enhance your team, if there's been a switch in teacher membership and the person that was on your team leaves for whatever reason, but you need to replace them, that's fine. Just tell, why in your narrative. Why are you adding that person? What are their strengths? What is their role going to be? And just kind of let the reader know this is what's happened in the narrative. It's certainly fine to add a member, or if a person's not getting the job done, they're kind of sowing seeds of discord amongst the brethren, if you will. It's okay to tell that person that maybe this team might not be the best thing for them, and tell them to maybe look in other areas to work in the school. That's fine too. I would recommend, if you do that, though, you have a good conversation with your site supervisor in that process, but that's part of being a leader too. That's part of being an administrator, is conflict resolution. And if you need to ask a person to step away for the betterment of the group, then that's certainly fine too. Just as I said, make sure that you do that after you have talked to your principal several times. Okay, I'm looking back for questions. Okay, question was, can you include a program that the school was using last year but not this year? Unfortunately, you can't do that. It needs to be what are you doing this year? What gap did you identify this year, but what is actively being done in that school to address this year's students based on that data? It's a good question, and I wish I could, but Gardner-Webb will kind of frowns on using things that might have been in place that aren't in place anymore. And if this has been a program that your school has used for the last 15 years or the last 5 years or last 3 years, might not be a good choice. If that's where you're at, contact me individually and we'll have a conversation about it. Okay, look for another question. Okay, certainly you're welcome. Certainly welcome. So task three will get everybody together, say, okay, this is the gap that we have identified. Now we need to have a conversation about what's the best practice, what's evidence-based practice that we can implement or reinforce or enhance or enrich to have a positive impact on this gap. And then in task 4, once you've identified the need, once you have decided on the best practice, then it's time to write the action plan. You lead the professional learning community in a collaborative development of an action plan. And it's just an educational action plan where you list possibly your goal, and within that goal, you list strategies or objectives that you are going to implement to address that need. And it's like strategy, the timeline, resources that you need, who's responsible, and how are you going to evaluate it. So we go back to kind of the SMART goal mentality: specific, measurable, action oriented, results oriented, and time oriented as well. So you go back to it has to be maybe establish some SMART goals, and then evaluate that. How will you know at the end of the day what type of impact that practice had on that group of students? So there has to be a measure at the end of it that's going to track that data. I mean, if you Google action plan, educational action plan, there's several templates out there. Now you need to talk about that in narrative form. You need to have that conversation with your team. Your team needs to develop this together under your leadership, under your facilitation. Develop that together and talk about that narrative of how that all came to play. And then you need to show the actual visual of the action plan. So that should be included in your narrative as well. Okay, and let's see. I'll go to the rubric real quick. I always like to just take a look at the rubric just to make sure that there's not any part that we missed. When you do the best practices, like I said, that research, annotated bibliography, make sure you do your citations. That's another thing. I'm glad I looked at that because that reminds me of another thing. When you finish your task and you do your references, always go back and make sure that every reference that you cited in your narrative is in your reference page, and make sure every reference that you put in your reference page, you have cited it in your main document. When you're reading a bunch of articles and you're pulling a bunch of stuff together, it's really easy to get off track on that. And what I do is I'll pull the document up. I go to in Microsoft Word, and hopefully I can pull this up real quick. And I know you guys know Microsoft Word, but just in case you're not familiar with it, just kind of tell you the process that I go to. Let's pull this to open document up here. I always go to Home. I go to Find. Let me get off this. The Zoom stuff keeps popping up. I go to Find. If in your reference page there is a bullet in your reference page, then I type in bullet, and I see if that comes up other than in your reference page, if I can find that name in your document. So that helps me find out, okay, it's in the bibliography, it's in the reference page, but did they cite it up in the narrative? And if they did, then when I pull up bullets, it's going to show me everywhere in that document that name comes up. Or if I see bullets in the narrative, then I'll type it in, and then I'll see if I can if I see over here where it listed, if bullet is also down the reference page. And that's how I check. It's quick, it's simple, it's easy to take care of that, and it's just another level of accountability to make sure that gets done properly. Okay, looking at the chat box here, see what questions we have. My eyes are getting blurry, so you'll have to bear with me for just a second. Okay. Okay. Good question. So let's say you're in a PLC, and let's say just due to the dynamics of the school or the environment of what you're working on, that PLC doesn't meet too often. So you meet and may not meet again for several days, several weeks. How can I meet and get feedback and accomplish these tasks on time if that group is not meeting every week? That's a challenge. It certainly is, but you're going to need to pull that information and pull that conversation in. So what you may want to suggest, or what you may want to try to do, is you don't have to meet face to face. You can have an online. You can establish a Zoom session with them, and just if your principal is aware of this, and your site supervisor is aware of what this program is and what the deadlines that you're under, then go to them and tell them what's going on. If it's logistically not feasible to have everybody to walk into the same room every time you need to have a professional learning community conversation, then get them on the phone, FaceTime with them. Use Zoom and have an e-PLC, an electronic professional learning community, to get some of this stuff done in these tasks. And so you can do that before the actual physical meeting. If you do that, just write about it in the narrative. Tell the reader, this is why I'm doing this, or as a result of the inability to physically meet for every so often, then we had a professional learning community through Zoom or FaceTime or however to kind of talk about some of the stuff. There's always value in meeting face to face, but understandably so, that may not be feasible depending on your particular situation. So the next best thing would be an electronic professional learning. All right, so getting back to the handbook here and the rubric, make sure you have your references listed, make sure they're in your document. It's all about best instructional practices that are associated with the need that you identified. Not every best instructional practice out there, not the flash in the pan, but if it doesn't directly connect to the need that you identified, you don't need to be reading about it, don't need to be considering it, don't need to spend time discussing it. Make sure that whatever your evidence-based research that you do is based on that need that was identified in task 2. That the candidate has utilized data. Okay, you go back and revisit the data that you talked about in task 2. You can go back and revisit that. You can show that the evidence-based practice that your team selected or practices that your team selected, and connect that back to the need. Make sure that you do that connection in task 3 for the reader. Okay, I talked about graphic organizers to illustrate. That's basically just the data that I talked about. You can put that data up there. If there's research, if there's visuals out there on the evidence-based practice and why it's effective, then yeah, you can put that there. Were study done, national studies done, or other studies done that showed why this was an effective approach for this need, and they put some charts and graphs and information out there about what the results were. Yeah, put that in your narrative. Properly cite that APA, but put that in your narrative too, and that can address this this graphic organizer part to task 3. Okay, in task 4, not only do you develop an action plan and you talk about how that was developed, but you also need to show that you have theoretical knowledge in developing an action plan. So you may want to pull in some research out there about why an action plan is effective, what an action plan needs to have. Dr. Church may have already talked to you about this in the course, but just diving right into an action plan, you want to show that you have the theoretical knowledge to support the actions, no pun intended, to support the actions that you're doing. So do a little bit of research on what an action plan is, how to implement one, how to create one or develop one. Put that in your narrative as well. Let the reader know that you did your homework as far as implementing or creating an action plan, and that you have that foundational knowledge that will allow you to do that effectively. Boy, these words or these letters are getting smaller the longer the day goes by. Okay. The whole time, make sure that you are working with your team to do this. You're showing that your team was actively engaged, whether it be electronically or face-to-face. Your team was actively engaged in creating this, and that you were the one that led them. That is so important in each of the evidences that you do in this program, as you always highlight your leadership. I don't know if some of you noticed, but when I give feedback, if I see something in the narrative that shows just a particular sentence or a phrase or a point in the timeline where you showed some leadership, I'll put evidence of leadership competency or leadership competency, just to let you know that I recognize that was a good part where you're showing that you're leading this group in that professional learning community. So a lot of times I'll put good. If I don't just give feedback for you to revise. If I see something good, I'm going to let you know about it. If I need a little bit more clarification, I'll let you know about it. If I read something, I thought, wow, that's interesting. I haven't seen that before. I bet that's a unique aspect to that environment. I may be interesting down. I may put interesting down to I don't know, just to kind of draw attention to it as well. So that's basically task 2 and task 3. Let me go up here. We can finish out the night with any questions that you might have. Thanks for the advice. The advice was, if you'll change your screen from 75% to 100%, you can see it better. And I really appreciate that. It was a very thoughtful, constructive feedback. But if I do that, then it's too much to look at at one time. But then I'm going like this. So I know I'm what is they used to say? eccentric. I'm a little eccentric about some things, but thanks for the recommendation. That was very kind of you. I appreciate that. So if I do that, then you guys are going to have to look at all of this, and I'm going to be going from here to here. So I certainly appreciate that. You guys are awesome. You are an awesome group. All right, so that was pretty much all that I wanted to cover tonight. And now when we get back together, we'll talk about Task 5, and then we're going to get into TaskStream. I know you all have got your TaskStream accounts. You may have already been in there looking around, and that's fine. Don't submit anything. Don't ask for any type of request, any type of comments or anything like that. Feel free to look around all you want. Don't feel like you have to upload anything. There's still plenty of time to do that. Whatever you're going to do in the APSL, you're not going to be able to do till you get these tasks accomplished anyway. So that's why Dr. Church and I are pretty adamant about, let's just worry about the task right now, and we'll attack TaskStream in a few weeks. But next time we talk about it, we'll certainly go over. I'll probably go over the next 2 times we meet. I'll talk about it and then do a review. So any questions out there to finish up the night? It's about 30 minutes. So let me know. I'll be happy to I'll stay online as long as you want to answer your question. Okay, let me check to see what we got. Yeah, sure, Atlas. Go ahead. You can come unmute and come online or type your question in. But go ahead. What's your question?
Okay, it's too. Can you hear me?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, it's too much to type. But one of my concerns. Well, I have 2 concerns. Sorry.
That's okay.
One of my concerns is when I did my task 2, and I put a video in there. I did a YouTube video, and I can click on it or highlight it, copy it, and put it in my browser, and it works. But my peers, they can't get it to work.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
And it might be their the type of browser they're using. Did you guys explore that? If you were using Chrome or I can't remember the new Internet Explorer, whatever that is, Edge, I think. Could that be the issue?
I'm not sure. We're meeting after this. Our Zoom group's going to be meeting after this meeting, so we may have to play around with it and see what's going on.
Sometimes it'll come up video restricted, and when that happens, the person trying to see the video might not have a YouTube account.
Okay,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I had to create an account, but see, my video that I did was at school. You know, we have restrictions and all that. When I did my PLC with my member at another school, we did it through Gmail, our Gmail account that we used. It's like FaceTime. Mm-hmm. And I had to get my cell phone and record because I didn't know how to record. Yeah. So, yeah. But I did it, and then I submitted it to YouTube and had to create an account, and all I did was highlight the URL. Mm-hmm. And that's what I pasted on my paper.
The video in YouTube, did you make it public or private?
I did it. I read that thing that was in our syllabus. I went through there and did all the steps. I can't really remember. I remember it said to go to options and make it public, but you had to take something.
Pull up YouTube here real quick, and let me just see if I can get a new tab opened up without the Zoom thing coming out. Okay, here we go. Now this is what I do. Like when I have the recording of what I want to put in, I'll go up here to this icon, create video.
Okay.
And of course, it's taking its own sweet time to open up.
See, I had to transfer mine from my phone to YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It might be better if you can
do Zoom next time.
Yeah. If you'll do Zoom, and once Zoom is over with, it'll save that recording. You'll have a folder. You can open it up with your video manager, whatever computer that you have. But if you'll just take that folder, put it in a separate box here, and just drag it over. I just
Okay.
click public, unlisted, private, scheduled.
Unlisted. That's what it was.
If you do unlisted, especially if you guys are talking about students, then that's what you need to do. Anything that I send out over the Gardner Web, and this is according to the accreditation organization, everything we send out has to be public. It has to be a public forum. If you do unlisted, that's okay. It just means if somebody searches for it, they won't find it, but you will have to physically give them that URL. So
Right.
that may be part of it as well, but they need to make sure that they have an account.
An account. Okay.
Yeah, that might be part of it too. If you're still having issues with that, let me know. I'll get you in touch with the technology person at Gardner Web, and they can help you from there.
Okay.
Good deal. What was your? So you had two. What was your other concern?
Okay. My other question that I'm kind of worried about, and when we talked about my PLC, since I'm a CTE teacher, and you remember I'm a loner, and we're discussing our proficiency because that's where we're really, really low. What if, like, I'm trying to figure out, because we're looking at the test data from first semester compared to second semester. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid that the class is going to be over before we get our EOCs back.
That's fine. That's fine.
Can I do classroom tests?
Whatever your team does, and even if it's the EOC, you don't have to finish this process. You just have to show that you have a plan in place to finish this process. So in task 4,
right,
that's just the creation of the action plan.
Okay.
And from that to task 5 is just a reflection. So you can go ahead and set it up, and you can go ahead and determine what the evaluation is going to be at the end of the game. Yeah, we fully understand that piece of information may not come into play until the class is way over. It's just that you have that plan in place.
Okay. Ooh, okay. Because I was worried, because I wanted to get those graphs too. So I was like, how are we going to do this? So.
Yeah, it stops at the development of the action plan. Now, if you get that information, because think about it, we're going to have to get all this wrapped up and send it in, before the actual end of the semester, and that's
right.
Okay. We've got plenty of time. But,
okay.
But if it does happen, great. If it doesn't happen, that's okay. The plan can still be carried out after the class is over. Just whatever. Don't let that hold your team up from determining the best way to evaluate this action.
Okay, because we're testing in June, so I was like, I want to get that data. So yeah.
I understand. And you think about the people we would open up 601 in the summer. I don't think Dr. Lamb may do that this summer, but think about that when we had those new people coming in the summer, they didn't have any students.
No.
We certainly allow for flexibility in that regard.
Okay. And sorry, one more thing. You said we could add other members. So in my reflection and stuff, I talked about it in my task too, but we're doing special ed because I think that's most of where our needs are.
Mm-hmm.
So we can pull in other members from special education. So that's okay.
Excellent. Yes, that's what you should do. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, just remember that we're not just asking you to do a dog and pony show. We're really wanting you to do something that's going to have an effect and an impact in your school. So we do it. It's the real deal, and this is real life. You may need to pull in members. You may need to change members. That's certainly fine. As long as
we do our assistant principal that's over that as well?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
The assistant principal that's over special ed, can we involve her as well?
Absolutely. Okay. I think that's a good move, sir. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. You're welcome. Hey, any other questions out there? Anybody got any more concerns or want to ask any questions about anything? Okay, great. Well, I know there's 2 documents that I haven't got to yet that I need to give feedback on. I'm trying to get everybody down, everybody that submitted as of 2/12. I'm trying to get them the feedback that they need before the end of the night tonight. I think I got 2 more to go, so I'm going to get offline and work on that. So if you submitted 2/12 or prior to 2/12, there's only 2 people that shouldn't have received feedback yet. Everybody else should have received feedback. If you haven't, feel free to send me an email and remind me. But I looked again today. I'm pretty sure that I only got 2 more documents to go through, and try to keep everybody within that 24-hour or as close as I can to 24-hour window. So, like I said, if I haven't gave you feedback, if you submitted as of 2/12, if it was late yesterday, then I'm probably take me a while to get to it. But anyway, I'll try to stay within that 24-hour. Does not hurt my feelings if you send me an email and say, hey, Joe, just wanted to let you know that I've submitted, or I've put this in the review tab, just to let you know it's there. It doesn't hurt my feeling at all to do that. Or send me an email and say, hey, I put this in a couple of days ago. I haven't heard from you or got any feedback. Can you kind of let me know where you're at in the process? Doesn't hurt my feelings. I don't want to do anything to hold you up or cause any. I cause enough stress in your life unintentionally, so I don't want to do anything else to cause any more stress. If it's going to help your stress level to contact me and find out where you're at and where I'm at in the process, that's fine. Well, thank you again for attending this evening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and we'll talk about Task 5 and also Task Stream. Looks like maybe. Okay, great. Okay. All right. Just want to make sure there weren't any more questions. You guys have a great evening. God bless. Stay healthy. The flu is running rampant in Wilkes County in the schools. So I hope and pray that your school system is not having to deal with that on a major scale. It'd be great if you didn't have to deal with it at all. But I hope and pray you and all your students and your family stay healthy. And we will see you next time. Have a great evening, and thank you so much for all your hard work.